Today, I wanted to talk about my perspective on self-doubt. Self-doubt has been a big player in my life. I didn't always know it as self-doubt, but it's always been there in the background. And this is something that shows up with all of my clients. So I wanted to find a way to shine a light on it, actually. Because one of the knowings that I have is that self-doubt is a colossal waste of time. Now, that is not judging, shaming, or making it mean anything other than it is something that we can choose to let go of, choose to heal. We can choose if we want it to be a part of our lives or not. I'm not saying it's easy, but awareness, that's something that has come up in a lot of the interviews that I did, was how important awareness is. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how I see self-doubt and how we might begin the process of releasing self-doubt from the story that we carry. So I see self-doubt as something that comes about because of trauma, conditioning, patterning. Some of these things may or may not be ours. Some of these things may be ancestral in nature. Some of these things may be past life oriented, and some of them could originate in this life. One of the areas that I work with is what I've called parts work. It goes by other names. Some people call it inner child. But the idea is that we have parts of us that are holding on to the trauma and to the wounding and the patterns based on a situation that occurred where we did not have the capacity in that moment to handle that situation. And trauma is so subjective, right? What is traumatic for me may not be traumatic for you. You might be able to handle it with ease, and I might just totally freeze and blank and be unable to process it. It does not make my trauma any less significant. What's important is that the part of me that experienced that trauma still carries that trauma. And in my case, I had a lot of not being good enough, not trusting myself, not believing that I had the answers. I always looked outside of self, that person really knows what's true. That person really knows the answer, or that person knows what is true for me or how I should be. And it took a lot of unwinding for me to release those stories, right? And in this process, I learned about all the parts of me that were holding on to this for various reasons. So I've shared a little bit about how I have spent a lot of my life being out of body. That was due to trauma. I dissociated and I didn't realize that I was out of body. The plus side of that is that because I spent so much time in the ethers, I became really adept at reading energy and feeling it and interpreting it. The downside to that is that I had a whole bunch of stuff stored in my body that I had to process. So the body is so important because the body is what holds these stories, these unprocessed emotions. And when we don't give voice to those emotions, when we don't let those parts of us be seen, we continue to enact the same story of not being good enough, the same story of not feeling brave enough to share our opinions, to share our to be creative, to put ourselves out in the world, to show up in the world. We keep playing the same thing over and over. And it's by becoming aware that we actually have a choice, that's when the healing starts. So like I said, I spent decades not thinking I was good enough. I have an energy healing business, and I actually wanted to do this, open it up 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And I was so scared. I thought people would look at me like I had three heads, right? And talking about energy work, the stuff that you can't, the woo-woo. And so I didn't do it. And I went about my life, avoiding looking at stuff, hearing the story of not being good enough, of not trusting the intuitive information I was getting, until it came to a point when I could not do that anymore. I physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually could not continue to do this. There was this inner conflict that was happening, and I had a decision to make. I could continue to deny, and patch things up and put Band-Aids on things and show up and do the coulda, shoulda, woulda stuff. Or I could take a look at it. And I chose to look at it. And piece by piece, layer by layer, I peeled it back and I began looking and ultimately feeling all of the emotions that I had spent a lifetime not feeling. I had absorbed the message that good girls don't get angry. So I had a lot of anger. I had to learn how to feel anger. I had to let go of all of those beliefs I had adopted that being angry was not good, because it is good. There are times when anger serves us. It lets us know our boundaries have been violated. So I began the process of removing the masks one by one. The mask that said I had to show up this way in the world in order to be liked, in order to be loved, in order to be deemed worthy. The mask that said I'm not allowed to be authentic. I can't be seen as weird or wacky or nerdy or geeky or goofy or silly. The mask that said I had to earn X number of dollars in order to be deemed valuable. The mask that said showing who I really am wasn't safe. The mask that said I didn't get intuitive information, that the information I got wasn't real. All of these masks I began removing one by one. And the thing is when we begin this healing work, we can address what we're able to get to, right? Sometimes we have to release some stuff, which makes the space for more stuff to come up. So we've heard people talk about the layers of healing work, and I find that to be true. As we continue the healing, the releasing, the processing, clearing out the old emotions actually creates space. We increase our capacity to see more, to go deeper, to let more of our light shine through. It is actually a never-ending process, because at some point it becomes less about healing the wounding and the trauma and more about stepping into who we really are, our magic, the power that we all have, our ability to co-create with the universe. We can't get to these things when we are carrying unprocessed stuff, when we're carrying wounding, traumas, patterns, conditionings that aren't ours, that haven't been processed. Those get in the way. So as we continue to dive deeper and peel back layer after layer, you feel lighter, you feel more authentic. Things that used to bother you just don't bother you anymore. There's nothing there to get caught on. It's just like, okay, if this doesn't work for me, I'm pivot, and it's not a big deal, right? We respond to things differently. And I think that's key. We actually have the space to respond rather than to react. So this whole mask of self-doubt is a thing that's perpetuated from a whole lot of different angles, a whole lot of systems that are currently in place, perpetuate the fear But you can choose not to buy into that. You can choose to look at your stuff, to be who you are, and to let your light shine in the world, to let your voice come out and share your gifts, share your opinions, share your thoughts, and create with authenticity, with the light that is actually you. We are so much more than what we've been led to believe. We just get to choose to do something differently. I would like to close this out by doing a light language. This is something that I feel is coming through. Let's just see what it's going to be. It feels like it is around allowing, creating the space, and taking the next step. Arakashiri manlakara to shu mamakana nana and sharakataki meet the kari varik shutakoto pishirikataka takitiki tikana takatakoto shurkataka papa takari taha na takari taka takara shurukatako pihi takiri yara ina shurukataka katara nara induna tarakashirikataki biki yakataka tarasharakataka taraka taraka parai shrekataku to shirikatiki pipikiti harika haragona ankara in arko ora harashrakataka kitiki tikishirikatiki oh no watakarakataka haraka ina na araka ina atakara pakara shurukotako pataka ataka utashkarataka ataka oro naraka shirikatiki tishirikatiki kimapaka arako araka 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 tashirikataka pa takara takara chushuto tarai nataka taraka in narakataka taraka in narakataka tu oroko tarko takama nashuko papa papa takaran ta nara harekashuru. Thank you very much for joining us today.